What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today's topic is Big Tech is rotten to the core. And I know that this sounds like an alarmist kind of thing, but I can assure you I did not originally intend for this channel to be about this. And I'm very passionate about technology, and I just don't know what else to do at this point but ring the bells and ring all the red alerts that you can to try to educate and let people know what is going on in technology and how it's going to take over everybody's life. And I mean, it already has to a certain extent. I think we have a lot of drones walking around, but I don't want to put people down. I think they're just not into technology. They like their phones, but they're completely oblivious to what's going on. So I'd like to raise awareness of that and offer some solutions as well. So in this video, there will be kind of two chapters. One would be why am I doing this and my investment into technology and why am I so passionate about this. I've exited the tech market for the most part. Like, I'm never gonna be working for a big firm or any kind of big tech or even a startup probably. I'm still having my clients who are very happy with my work, and I'll keep it that way. But yeah, there's kind of a history behind why I even got into technology. And if you want to skip this section and go straight to the meat, then there will be some type of time code right here, so you can skip my personal nonsense, okay? But let me start with this. I was enamored by technology ever since I was a kid, and the first kind of technological thing that blew my mind was the television. I grew up in Hungary. We were quite poor, but we had color television, and black and white, color television, doesn't really matter. It was just mind-blowing to me that how this technology works. I didn't understand it, but I really wanted to, even at the young age of 7 or 8 or 9. But really the big turning point for me was when I was about 12, or let's say 12, when I got a Nintendo, what we just called Nintendo, but it was supposed to be an NES, but it was actually a Chinese knockoff of an NES. And it took its own type of cartridge, and it had a bunch of it had Mario, whatever Mario game on there, but it was probably like a copy, kind of, it was kind of a reverse engineered copy of Mario. It had like a version of Duck Hunt. I think it had 20 games on there. And I was enamored by the fact that this machine is controlling these things on the screen. So not only can you watch movies and television on this screen, but you can have this digital input into the machine. And it was just it started kind of an avalanche inside me at that point of time. And then the biggest milestone really was that when my grandma got a 386 computer, which was as big as this desk, maybe even taller, like a really huge tower. It even had a turbo button. I think it was 22 megahertz with the turbo button and 11 megahertz without it. It had a monochrome black and yellow screen, and it had Windows 3.1 and MS-DOS 6.22. And that was my machine that I just started getting busy on. I had still till this day, one of my best friends, Kevin from Hungary, who we grew up together. And I remember just going to my grandma's house, to her apartment, to use the 386. And I would talk to my friend, and I would say, okay, call me. Let's talk on the phone. Phone calls at that time were not cheap, and also you kind of have to keep it short. But we conspired, and we kind of had this thing where we're gonna explore how to code. And I remember I had this big book about coding in Turbo Pascal using QBasic, and we would stay up till midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And I distinctly remember nights when I would, everybody's asleep, my grandma, grandpa, they're in the next room sleeping, I'm in the living room. I would sneak out of the living room, go down the hallway. Their room was closed, right? But I would quietly open the door, and I would literally get in a crawling position. I would crawl in their room, and they had a little table kind of close to their bed. And this was like this is kind of like a SWAT team doing this, right? I'm like having this SWAT moment, and I go in there, and they had a phone in their room. That's the reason I was there. And I had to unplug the phone, just super covert and quiet. And I would crawl back out and close the door very safe, very quietly. And then I'd go in the living room. I'd take the other phone in the living room with it had a long cord, and I would put it on the seat where I'm sitting in front of the computer, and I put a pillow on it, and I would be sitting there on the phone coding. And I'd get a phone call, and I'd just hear a faint ringing, and then in between the rings I would have to pop up and pick up the phone between the next ring, and then we'd be on the phone for maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes at a time, because we can't really use the minutes at the time. It all cost a lot of money, especially in Hungary at that time. But we would just share, like, hey, I just wrote this procedure. They would used to call procedures, right, in Pascal. And we would just share all this data with each other, and that kicked off my love for computer technology. And then my first job, I'd say, that I got paid for before I immigrated to the US, I know I discussed my first US job. In contrast, in my first job in Hungary was my mom was working as a flower designer next to a hospital, and her boss had another office, which was like a different business right next to her. And I would go, and one time my mom was asking, hey, my boss wants to hook up this dot matrix printer, this like giant office printer in her office. You know computers, right? Like, can you hook that up for him? I said, sure. Of course, I can try. I mean, LPT 1 port probably, right? Just install the drivers and and make sure it works. And so I did that. Windows 3.1 system. I installed the drivers, connected the printer, and it worked. And I remember getting paid at the time about 30,000 forints, which was a lot of money. I mean, for me, especially at this age of maybe 14. And I, of course, immediately spent it on a Voodoo 1 card, which was one of the first, or actually the first graphics accelerators. And I had a Pentium 133 later, so I put it in that computer. So I was able to play Quake with superb graphics. And I also bought Quake 3 Arena, Quake 3 Team Arena, and Unreal Tournament. And those were the days. That was my first kind of entry and going into technology and computers. So now I'd like to frame this mindset of, ever since then, I've had a stint in my life when I did construction, because I kind of had no other choice. But ever since I was able to make it in computing and technology, and being a technologist now for the past good 10-15 years, I really have my heart in this topic, okay? And I do know a lot about it, so I'm not taunting any of that, but I think it's important to know that context. I'm not just coming out of left field here to say this stuff because it's popular to hear it. I think a lot of us know, especially the ones in technology, a lot of us know that things are going astray and things are getting bad. But why is it getting bad? So let's take a look at what happened with Facebook at first, like give you kind of an example of what's going to happen again now with the tools that we're using today, that we're saying is mind-blowing, and it's like changing the whole world, right? And taking jobs, right? So let's take a look at Facebook, because I lived through this myself. Maybe I've talked about this in another video a little bit, but this kind of fits here real well. Facebook, I was big on MySpace. I really liked MySpace, and I liked the top 8 friends. I liked the JavaScript you could put in there to kind of make your page very unique. I was even making music at the time. I was producing music, and I would upload some of my links on there, and I was just using it as promotion to kind of show my music, to use it kind of as a music distribution platform by myself. And then Facebook came out, and Facebook has been out for a while, and I was resistant to it. I was always resistant to change. That's kind of built into me, especially, I don't know, I guess as I'm getting older, I kind of like the old way because things were just better back in those days. It's true. It's probably true for most of humanity. Everybody says it's been better back in the day, but in this case, I think it's very true. So what happened with Facebook? Facebook, when it was coming up, originally it was, of course, designed by Mark Zuckerberg's and his pervy friends to rate women's looks on campuses. And, you know, with something like that, I mean, even just the rotten purpose of this app to begin with, and this growing out of that, just makes complete sense to what happened to it later. MySpace was so big, and then Tom, the good old MySpace owner who you were friends with if you started a MySpace account, because you were always friends with Tom. I guess he really needed friends. I mean, these guys were probably very socially awkward. The first Facebook promise was that Rupert Murdoch, the big tech billionaire from Australia, just bought MySpace, and he's spying on you, and he's taking all your data, and he's studying it, and he's studying your likes and whatever, right? And so this stirred up kind of a unrest, or kind of people were worried about that. There was a lot of marketing push behind this at the time, and I gave in. Maybe around 2000. I don't really know the dates, but I want to say around 2008 or something, like early adopting into Facebook. And when I even remember I was at my mom's house, actually. I was visiting her, and I got on her computer, and I was like, you know what, I'll just sign up for Facebook. I'll make a password, whatever. Oh, this is pretty cool, actually. It's just all my friends. Some of my friends I could already find down there. Some friends from high school, and it was cool. And I said, okay, let me take my music kind of distribution or promotion to this platform. I'm gonna try to just push my music here, and hey, it's all people that I know anyway. And then I was just adding friends, add friends. I maxed out the add friends counter like every single day. I think you can only add like 50 friends a day back in those days. And the promise of Facebook was that we'll never spy on you, we'll never take your data. You can one-click copy over all your messages from MySpace. So I was able to go into MySpace and copy the messages. You just had to put in your MySpace login. Boom, everything copied right over. And for a period of time, you can actually even message your MySpace users, your MySpace friends from Facebook, and it would log into MySpace and send it on MySpace. So this was an interoperability incentive for users to come through and make it a one-click, very easy, very painless, bring everything over to Facebook. So Facebook started growing and growing and growing, and I witnessed this, and I'm sure many of you have as well. I started a page, and especially since I was producing a show in Las Vegas, it kind of grew into a bigger thing. We started a page, and at that time it was like, hey, we start to have pages that have more and more viewers. So, you know, this is like a publication, a publisher platform. You have 3,000 likes on your page. That's guaranteed 3,000 people that will see your content coming out on that page, right? What is the other reason for liking or subscribing? That's basically a like on a page was a subscribe to the page. That means very easy. Everybody has one timeline. Everything's in chronological order of what happened that day. And if you like the page, that could be a band's page like Metallica, that could be whatever. When Metallica put out an update that day, when you come home and log into Facebook and you look at your wall, Metallica's post would be right in between all your friends' posts as well. So hey, not only did I get all what my friends were doing today, or just people that I followed or friended, but also I got this post by Metallica. I don't know why I'm coming up with that example. I actually don't like Metallica that much, but whatever, your favorite band would have a post, and it was very personable. It was like, hey, they're talking to me. I'm having like a very inside look into my favorite band's thoughts and processes and news, right? So That was kind of cool. So not just kind of cool, that was amazing. And then slowly that started to change. We started seeing something, I remember this day distinctly as well, when I logged in and I started seeing people that I don't even know. And I went into the settings and I discovered a timeline setting feature, which was either see posts in chronological order or posts that we think you should see. It was, I don't know how it was worded, but it was the two choices that you could make, right? Chronological or let us decide what you need to see. And every time I logged into Facebook, somehow it was set into that second setting, what we want you to see. And I remember having to go back every time I logged in and change that setting, and somehow that setting did not get saved. And slowly but surely that setting disappeared. I wasn't there every day looking through this stuff, right? I did notice it and I did comment about it at the time, to friends and whatever, but I thought that was kind of weird. And then it was off to the races. What basically Facebook did is what every other and shitified platform has done. I would argue that now the later ways that now recently these big tech companies that come out of nothing and kind of take over a whole market should be definitely illegal. Blitz scaling and big collusion with financier firms coming and taking over the market definitely should be illegal. I mean, it was illegal. It was used to be called antitrust, and we haven't enforced that in a long time, but we're going to get to that in a second. What happened with Facebook is it brought in all the users, just like you and me. We had the network effect, which is like so over, we've already talked about this many, many times. The network effect is when you can't decide to leave a platform. Everybody's there because their friends are there, and your friends are there because you're there. And just like how you can't even decide to where you want to go to eat tonight with your friends, you can't decide to leave the platform, and it's really difficult to leave the platform, and you cannot just take your data and move it all over to another platform. So you have this vested time, like this time that you put into the platform, and you don't want to let that go. There's no real easy way to download your data, back in those times anyway. Now they've made it, one-click download all your data. But the point is, we lock each other's into these social networks. These are the first effects of this. Is something that the platform benefits from, is you cannot leave the platform because all your friends are there. And that's just step one. First, they provided a really good service for us, just users, right? As soon as it wasn't requiring an edu email address to join Facebook, it started to be if it's just user-friendly, super cool, everything's modern, everything's easy to use. And then they slowly take away that value. First, they not only lied about spying on you, they started spying more than anything else has spied before. Everything that you have liked, followed, clicked, just even looked at, for how long, the pictures, the stuff you upload, everything is categorized and just put in a database and just stored probably for future use as well, as if we're just about to see. And then of course business people were contacted. The businesses that Facebook contacted were, the pitch was, we have this giant user base, we have 100 million people here, we've been spying on them about everything that they do, so we have this really good market for publishers to publish their work, and you can show this work, we'll show this work to these people, excuse me. And now you can create a funnel that goes to your website. All you have to have is an excerpt, the first half of a paragraph of your article, let's say, on your website. And now we're going to push it to these eyeballs that didn't sign up for it, but we're just going to push it to them anyway. And you're going to get a lot of hits from this to your website, and you can monetize that as you see fit. You can basically just take that and monetize it. And this was a great funnel, and a lot of companies actually started out promoting themselves on Facebook like this as publishers, and they got a lot of hits and a lot of clicks and a lot of money from this. And then the other people that Facebook went and cornered were the advertisers. Because they have all our data, they could really target, fine-tune targeting like nothing we've ever seen in the business of advertising before. They went to advertisers and said, do you want to advertise from this age group, this demographic, this location, this interest, this whatever? We have that technology. We can push it right to the eyeballs. We basically beam that information right into the eyeballs. We're going to put it right in the timeline that they chose to be just their friends. Well, guess what? This is a free product. You're not paying for it, so you are the product, right? We've heard this, which is bullshit, because actually, even if you pay for it, you're still the product, so it doesn't matter whether you pay for it or not. You were bombarded with advertisement by these people. You non-consensually got bombarded with ads. So even then, it was still a good enough service. They made sure to introduce more and more functionality for regular end users to keep using the service. It wasn't, they made sure that they towed that line of like, hey, I'm pissed off about these ads and these publishers I never asked for, but okay, fine, at least still my friends are here, and hey, now there's video, right? So now fast forward a little bit more, and I've seen this part of it as well. As a page owner, as someone who worked tirelessly every day to come up with original content, post on our page, grab those likes, get 5 likes a week, 10 likes a week, 50 likes a week to grow our pages on Facebook. Slowly, this other feature started creeping up, saying boosted posts. So for pages to reach your whole audience of, let's say you have 3,000 likes on your page, that's 3,000 guaranteed people that used to see your post from that page. Now it takes $10 to boost your post to reach those 3,000 people. It's insane to me that people didn't just revolt at that time, turn around and leave the platform, because the reason they didn't is because they worked so hard to build up those likes on their pages. I know we worked really hard to get good content on there, to share, and we used to have to go into all these groups, and I had other friends in other groups, and we were just sharing, spamming basically with, I thought, with articles that we wrote that I thought were actually good. We're not spamming, we're not lying, we're not scamming, we are trying to, at the time, cover the electronic music industry with good articles. And, well, that's what started to happen. You had to start paying for, you had to start paying to reach your own audience. And this is how the business guys started getting reeled in, or the business users or the business pages started to have to pay to reach their own audience that they worked so hard to get. So not only is the platform now shitified for the end user, because you're seeing all kinds of ads and stuff you never asked for, and what the hell am I doing here? But for business owners or that are trying to either publish or advertise, it's also horrible. Slowly they twiddled and adjusted the dials just so there's just a little bit of value in the product, because you're locked in, and there's this feeling that you put so much work into this, you don't want to let it go, right? There's the false something principle. I can't remember. But anyway, why did this happen? What are these forces that make platforms able to unshitify? What makes it that this isn't illegal? I'm sure a lot of you have asked, how is this illegal? How is it legal that DoorDash wants to pay you $2 for a delivery as a driver to spend 25 minutes on a delivery waiting for food and going to get stuff? Why are they paying you $3 per ride on Lyft or Uber? How do they get to this level where they're so powerful that they encompass your life, or they are just making a service that you might rely on, and they just pull the rug out of you? Isn't there like some kind of law against that? Well, let me tell you. For the most part in the United States, no. I guess the United States government doesn't give a flying fuck about end users or consumers. Consumer protection in the United States is a joke, is a laughing stock. The entire world is laughing at the United States, how much these big companies, our own big companies that grass grown, right? Just like we should be proud of these companies because they are like the biggest and the trillion-dollar companies that we have and the whole world owes them and everything, right? They're fucking us the most. This is fucking crazy. But that's true. We don't have any consumer protections here. Privacy laws? Forget it, man. Everybody's spying on you from asshole to appetite. And let's take a look at the 4 market forces that originally controlled these big firms and these big giant corporations and all of these assholes right here. First of all, before I even start, if you and any of you here watching this channel are glorifying any of these bastards, these dumb, socially awkward idiots that are running these platforms, please right now unsubscribe and get lost and go follow another channel. There's plenty of other channels that are talking about sucking some Elon Musk, you know what. So go ahead and do that. We're not talking about that here. These guys are also employees in a company. CEOs are also employees and they answer to the board. And, we have a lot of greed in society, and a lot of it is based on greed. They don't want to let go of control. They don't want a fair market where everybody can compete, and they've gamed the system. So what are the 4 market forces that control these giant firms, or should control these giant firms? Number 1 is competition. It makes complete sense. If you have 100 companies competing with one another, they're going to want to give better value to their users, to their customers. This goes to every single type of company out there, right? As far as, maybe there's a handful of exemptions, but for the most part, if you want healthy competition or good products, you want good competition between these companies. This one's going to race to give you more value so you get more users, so they get more users, right? And the other guy that is not providing good value is going to lose users. So there's this natural competition where one goes up, the other one goes higher, then this one goes even higher, and then this one goes even higher. And all we get is just better and better products that are more efficient, easier to use, provide more value. I mean, it's just better for everybody. For the companies, yeah, it's a little more pain because they constantly have to innovate, but that's what keeps them on edge. If they don't innovate, they just get out of business. Leave some room for the next guy to come in, right? Now let's rewind time a little bit into the Reagan era. As Ronald Reagan started running for to be a president on the campaign trail, he was running on basically rolling back antitrust regulation. Not just him, but even people before him, and even all the way up to the Biden era, the antitrust regulations in this country have just been corroded and eroded away. But Reagan really hit it hard. You've all heard of monopolies, right? You know the popular board game Monopoly. What happens in that board game? One person always ends up with all the money and puts everyone else out of business. And everyone else is struggling during that time, and you really go through that motion where it sucks that this guy has so much power and you're just kind of struggling through halfway through the game because you already know you're probably going to be losing, right? It sucks. It really sucks. Not the game is fun, but monopolies, as they take power, they basically put everybody else out of business, and it really sucks for everyone else. And once they have all the power, they have all the control over pricing, services, anything. They could take away all the services and raise the prices. There's no one else to compete with them and say, hey, I offer more services for less cost. Nobody's there, so they could do as they please. There is this thing called Consumer Welfare Standard. Let's look this up together because it blew my mind. There were and still are people that believe that monopolies are good because they are efficient, and they're good for the consumer because they're efficient. Why is Google number 1? Oh, of course, because they're the best. Why would we take taxpayer money to punish the best of an industry, right? That's like the That's kind of the reverse kind of weird way of thinking about, I guess this is how you think about business when you have no idea what could happen to a market, or maybe it's corruption. I'm not sure why this was the case or still is for the past 40 years, but there are staunch supporters of consumer welfare theory, saying that monopolies are good and we need to not enforce antitrust because monopolies are efficient and they're really good at what they do and we need not to punish them. This, I think, is insane. And this is what happened with the Reagan administration. They took away a lot of this antitrust, and let's see what happened today. So today we live in a day and age where Google can spend $25 billion a year to be the default search engine on Firefox, on big carrier networks, on Samsung phones, and of course on iOS. And so if you have a competing search engine, how could you attract any investors into investing into your product when the market is so cornered? There's not even a chance to compete. So there's just going to be Google, and that's all there is, right? It's important to remember that Google is not a make things company. Google is a buying things company. The only thing Google has made that is of any value is the original 1996 backrub algorithm that actually grew into Google, PageRank, and the Google search algorithm. That was the only thing really of actual value that Google made. Everything else that came after that, Maps, Drive, all this management console, analytics, ad tech, all the stuff that Google is today, they bought and absorbed in sensuous mergers and absorption, right? Nothing stopped them. Antitrust law is right out the window. They were just buying and buying and buying up more and more markets. So that's where we are with Google today, and that's where we're going to keep being until these regulators kind of come back. And this comes back to my second point. The second force that keeps these big companies in check, or should be, is regulation. Regulation doesn't work unless regulators have teeth. If you have a bully in school, and you can imagine this actually happening in real life. If you have a child that's being bullied in school and you tell him, and I'm not saying this is right, but you tell him you have to go up to that kid and slap him in the face. This actually happened to me in 7th grade. I had a bully, and my mom told me just go up to him and slap him in the face. And I did, and I'm not saying this is right, but I was scared, and I slapped him, and then I ran away. But then things changed and actually became my best friend for 2 years. Because I showed that I cannot and I will not take his BS. Now on the flip side, if regulators, or this, in this case, if I didn't hit this guy hard enough that he got knocked back and said, whoa, wait a second, this guy hits back. If I hit him soft, that would have made it worse, because the whole school, this happened in front of the whole class, by the way. So when I slapped this guy, the whole class saw it, and he was embarrassed, and he had this whole like matrix move, because I hit him pretty hard, at the time. And then even though I ran away because he had a friend there as well, it really punched that guy out of wanting to bully me again, right? Now, what happens when you hit that bully with a little bit of a soft touch like that? Do you ever have these dreams where you want to you have this guy, you want to punch this guy, and you feel like you're underwater, and you're just like, you can't, and you're like having this soft, you can't defend yourself? I don't know. You tell me. This maybe maybe I reveal my inner weirdness, I guess. But I've had dreams where I feel like I want to punch somebody and I can't, and I'm so weak. And when that happens in front of a bully, well, you might as well transfer schools, because now you just showed the whole class that the bully, and they just laugh at you. And so if you don't hit the bully hard enough, you're going to be in even more trouble. That goes to the regulators as well. If the regulators can't bite, then they're out the window. So with monopolies and with antitrust being taken away and letting these mergers, these incestuous mergers happen over time again and again and again for 40 years, turning a blind eye to it, saying, oh, it's consumer welfare. What we end up with is, instead of hundreds of companies in a sector competing, it's only 5 or it's only 3. So those 3 companies have a really easy time getting into a meeting and saying, let's agree on our lobby positions and let's send these 10,000 lobbyists or 2,000 lobbyists to Washington, and we agree exactly on something that is good for all of our companies, right? We're going to agree on this agenda and we're going to push it through. Therefore, we're just going to completely basically capture our regulators. This is called regulator capture, right? And that's happened already. Regulators don't have teeth. Lena Khan did some good things, like, believe it or not, under the Biden administration, Lena Khan actually did some good things. They try to do good things, but here's the other side of it. They're really underfunded, these regulators. They're, if I was king for a day, which is really unpopular right now to say, I get it, and I want democracy, guys, but I'm just saying, if I had all the power, I would say I would give the regulators just as much money as we give NASA, or maybe more. I would give them billions and billions, and I would let them go to town on these giant tech firms that are owning tech stacks from the bottom up all the way, where they stop competition and shitify our lives and charge us money for our own data, while they're tracking us and selling our data to the highest bidder. I mean, we are living in this dystopian nightmare. We just don't even realize it, because it's been a slow boiling thing. It's taken so long. And if you told me this, 25 years ago, when I already had some semblance of what the world is, I would have been like, no, man, there's not gonna be a day when it's like this bad. But trust me, it's about to get worse, and I'm gonna get to it. Number 3, how these companies are being controlled or being kept in check is interoperability. And this is a big one too, because computers are inherently interoperable. We built computers to run code, and if you don't like that code, you can change that code. Meaning, I can make any computer do anything I want, because that's how it was designed. They're Turing-complete, universal von Neumann machines. I'm about to make a video just about that, because I think the history of computing is super interesting. How we came up with this universal machine that could do anything we wanted to do within the limits of it being a computer, but we can make it calculate what we want, do what we want with the peripherals that it has connected to it. So it's a very, very powerful thing that we invented. Now here comes copyright, anti-circumvention laws, patent, trademark, non-compete, non-disclosure, trade secrecy. Reverse engineering is a crime punishable by 5 years in prison. Pound me in the ass, prison.
To a term of no less than 4 years in a federal pound me in the ass prison.
And a $500,000 fine to bypass an access control. It's highly illegal for you to take this device that spies on you and takes your location data every 10 seconds, and its orientation and its movement, and detects what you're talking about to show you better ads, and God knows what else it's doing, because we don't know, because we can't reverse engineer it, because it's $500,000 fine, right? So we invented these digital locks. The DMCA brought this out in 1998, probably one of the worst regulation, next to, I think, the big beautiful bill that we've ever, or law that we ever put in place, saying that digital locks are something to protect copyright. So these big tech companies have used these digital locks against us. And God knows what your phone is actually doing now. You have no idea, to be honest. And there's no way for you to find out. You could probably disconnect it, reverse engineer it. Maybe if you're lucky, it doesn't phone home that you're doing it. But if they find out, you will go to prison and your whole life will be ruined. So I think that's bad. I don't know what, how anyone can think that that is not bad. But we did not invent computers for this reason. We wanted this to be an interoperable thing. If I don't like what this piece of shit here is doing, I can take it, reverse engineer it, remove the adware that is showing me ads, remove all the bullshit that's in there, and just totally have something that I want, because this is just a device. The code running on it is interoperable. I could take that code and nothing would stop me from reverse engineering that code. It's very possible to do. It's not that difficult to reverse engineer what's happening on these phones, but it's so illegal that we can't actually do it. And nobody will do it because it's a liability, and nobody wants to go to prison. Let's take a look at another example, not just the phone, but an HP ink. What blows my mind is HP ink has DRM in it, right? There's like a lot of stories on, if you buy an older printer, and if you go up to a certain firmware, you can exchange ink cartridges, or if you don't sign up to like HP Plus ink, then you can use these third-party ink cartridges. If you want to buy HP ink, it's $35 per cartridge, right? That contains just a little bit of ink, a lot more of it is just plastic, and then there's this chip inside that has a pairing mechanism that's protected by DRM, and the printer needs to communicate with it to make sure you are an authentic HP cartridge. If you look at how much ink is actually in there and you multiply it over by its price and you take 1 gallon of it, it's more expensive than some of the most expensive. It's more expensive than like gallium. It's $10,000 a gallon. Do you want to pay $10,000 for ink that you can actually make in your backyard? You actually could make ink in your backyard. Just Google that. How to make ink. We've been doing that since we were writing books. It's not that expensive, but HP wants to make you believe that it is. And this is just another example of what DRM and these security locks are doing to us. And number 4, and again, this was maybe a topic we talked about in a different context before. Number 4 of what keeps these big corporations, these big corrupt trash corporations in check were or are the tech workers. Those beautiful, nice offices at Google where you have doctors and daycare and all these nice things. People lick these coders' butts for coming to work here. Thank you so much. You know why? Because they were in high demand. They were the guys that knew how to build it, and the bosses wanted them. And so it was really the coders, and these guys were in charge because they could just turn around, leave, and get another job across the street. And so they held all the power. So this is why you saw these amazing offices that are put there to make them comfortable. But in exchange, they had to push and push and push. They had to meet deadlines. They had to sacrifice. A lot of these guys, I don't want to talk crap about all these workers or coders, the head guys at Google. They're brilliant freaking coders, and they're brilliant engineers. And they were taken care of like that because they had all that power. And once you own a suite like this, let's say you're working on Google Maps, and you're one of the head engineers of Google Maps, and there's like an elite team of coders, those guys are very highly valued. You can't just fire and hire those guys. They built the entire infrastructure, the system. So you can't you guys know, if you code, it's really hard to find somebody when the first thing they come in, they might take at this point 6 months to try to understand the context of what this complex system is doing. It's not that easy to just replace some big time engineering person like that. Well, take a look at today. Google is paying you not to work there. This is just right before, this is brand new news, couple days old. Google is now paying you to leave. What's next? They'll give you 5 weeks of salary. The next thing is a big, huge round of layoffs. And at the same time, what are they doing? They're bringing foreign workers over here to pay them half the money that we used to make. And they don't care about the product like the other guys did, who gave up their time. They didn't go to their sister's wedding because they had to push a deadline. They didn't go to their father's funeral because they had to meet a deadline. And so when you have a situation like this, you're invested into that product. You put blood, sweat, and tears into this product. So when your boss comes to you and say, and shitify this now and make it worse for users, you as the worker are going to stand up and say no. And guess what? I have all the power because you can't find another one like me easily. So I'm going to say no. We'll put our foot down. All 5 of us in this department, we say no. We're not going to put ads in maps because it's dangerous. We want people to see, where they're going so they could hold a line of shitification. But that's also evaporated right now as Google is preparing for probably one of their biggest layoffs in years. And I think, that's also being replaced by foreign workers that are getting paid half the money, and they don't give a flying rat's ass about the product. They didn't have to miss their father's funeral. They didn't have all that attachment to the product. It's now easier to bring those guys in. There's an abundance of tech people, even really, really good ones. So, we kind of lost that fight as well. Now that we've explained that part of it, we know how we get shitified by a product. We looked at Facebook as an example. We could take this to Amazon. We could take this to Google, YouTube. We could take this to X or Twitter, I guess. Anything, any big tech creation that we have out there is getting worse and worse. I would now ask you, as much as AI is being pushed right now, and as much as it is a bubble to a certain extent, it's always a bubble, right? Can you imagine an unshitified AI product? Can you imagine how they're going to reel us in all the way into these AI products where we're not even going to know how to code? Some generations maybe come up, give it 10 years, 15 years, and they slowly erode the features of these AI tools. They start charging more for the simpler features. They start showing you ads, and they probably invent some kind of weird, nightmarish way that where business customers get screwed separately from just end users to advertisers. They're working on this right now in these board meetings, right? There are people dedicated to make these plans, these marketing, these kind of shitification plans, if you will. How are they going to extract more money once you're hooked to these AI products? And not only is this these AI products are inherently connected to the cloud, so everything you're typing in is going to be given straight to them. If you generate images, if you're working artwork, everything is sent straight to them. This is so much worse than what Facebook did. This is so much worse than the shitification we've gone through before. I think it's time to ring the bell, guys. This is bad. Now, how is it being helped, or what is being done to kind of help this? Believe it or not, the EU's been on the forefront of at least some semblance of trying to protect people, consumers, privacy laws. And so let's bring up some examples. 2022, a lot happened in 2022. Good things that we may have missed. The EU came out with the Digital Markets Act. This requires companies to have interoperability standards, an API that will let other, potentially competitors come up, communicate with that API, and grab all the data and make switching a lot easier for users. This makes competition easier. So if you want to have a new Facebook, you can say, hey, we made a new company which is called Facebook 2 or the anti-Facebook, where we promise this, this, and this, and we connect straight to Facebook's API, and we'll have all your likes, all your messages, all your everything, and we could just take it off that platform and move it on over so you feel right at home, you have all your connections, and everything's easy. This makes that switching cost a lot easier, and I think it's a really good move to the right direction. Is it enough? Probably not. Let's look at Apple's lawsuit with Epic. Epic won that lawsuit, so what does that mean? It means that not just Apple, but Google has to provide the ability to upload another Play Store, another App Store in their Play Store. So you can go to Google Play Store and download a different App Store that is not owned by Google, that has its own apps and rules, and it's competing with the Google Play Store. This is huge because Google Play Store was just kind of a monopoly on Google platforms until now. Thanks to Epic for starting that lawsuit. Another big one that's a good news is the EU, because they actually care about their people. It is the Digital Services Act. And we can also read on this, but it basically makes it so competition is more fair, again, helping out new companies that come up and try to compete with the big guys. And another one, which we haven't really touched on here, is the Oregon law, which is a right to repair bill, which passed, which makes it illegal to have these parts that you put in, let's say, tractors, because, some tractor companies are really anti-consumer. And believe it or not, even the military is making moves right now for having an or a right to repair bill, because they have issues in the military with certain devices not working, and you can't just fix them. Just like with your car, I don't know if you've had an issue with your car where your mechanic said, all right, now we have to tow your car to the dealer to flash these parts or to make these parts connect together, because every more complex part in a car has its own chip and its own code and its own computer, basically, to communicate with one another, and the dealer has to pair those items, and they'll just charge $200, $300, $500 for just hooking up this thing for 10 minutes and pairing the item. And there's no reason for this for many cases. There's definitely no reason for this. And these are the better moves that are being made. Here's a Verge article about the Oregon law. Oregon's SB 1596 is the first law to ban device manufacturers from using parts pairing to dictate what replacement components can be used. So if we look at this, 3-1 margin, they passed this bill. It'll take effect next year. So after January 1st, 2025. So now if you're making some new products, you cannot have these parts behind a DRM. And I think this is definitely a way to move in the right direction. And let's now talk about, just to close this video off, because I know it's long, what can you do and what can we do together? This is, again, not an alarmist thing, not to get you all worried, but there are things you can do. First of all, push your local and state legislation the right way by contacting your representatives. That's always a good idea. Number 2, you can also make a YouTube channel. Get on there. You don't have to show your face. Just like spread the word somehow. Get on some social networks and spread the word about this. Cory Doctorow is a really good you'll see that a lot of the examples I'm taking, and I've always held him as a good source for this, because he's had a really well documented track record on this. Look him up and spread this message and just let everybody know, because it all starts with information. If more people know about it, more people vote towards it, and we still live in a world where if enough people pressure these representatives for certain things, then we can say more change. We could definitely see more change than if we didn't do anything about it. We should not just sit back and mope and give up about this. I think we need to definitely hit it hard. So these are ideas. Of course, another one big on right to repair is Louis Rossmann. And if you look up Futo, everything that they're doing is I have on my phone and I use, and I'm actually researching how to turn this Fold 6 into a de-Googled device. And you can make that change yourself. Get off these platforms, stop paying them money. There's that way where we can hurt them, and spread that word and look up Futo, because everything they do, every single product they make, have the same kind of guiding principles, which is open source, but they still want you to pay them, because while you can look at the source code and see exactly what these programs are doing, you could change it if you want to. How cool is that, right? If I download a Photos app that is AI analyzing all my photos and directly sending it to Google, I can have an identical program to Google Photos called Image by Futo, which doesn't do any of that. And if you don't believe it, you can look at their source code and you can change it if you want. I still highly recommend, paying for these because they work very hard over there to get these done. And I think that's, while it's kind of a shoddy business model, I think they're still kind of figuring it out. Having open source posted of your product online is immensely powerful. And I really think it's a right way to move towards the right direction. And, I always had this motto, even back in the day when I first started doing collaborative work with more people. I always said, give love to get love. You have to show love to receive it. You have to show your intention outward. And if you do it long enough, you will have some love back. So I always kind of felt that way. And I feel that way about Futo as well, because they are doing it. They are doing the hard work. They're releasing it. And now, so they showed you love there. Now I think it's time to show them some love back by paying for these. And even if you can afford it, pay a little extra, because these guys work really hard and they're not making Google money. They're making barely any money compared to the big guys. So with that said, that was the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you, I don't want to say enjoyed it, but I hope you learned some from it. Give me all the feedback in the comments. Let's talk about this. Let's have some more ideas. The next video is going to be maybe even a little bit longer, but I'm going to try to make it interesting. All right. See you then.